I turned down the chance to take over my dad's furniture business and decided to build something of my own instead. At his retirement party, he introduced me as a former employee and then dropped the bombshell that he was ashamed to call me his daughter. Hey there. So, I'm a 34-year-old woman, and for about a year now, my dad and I haven't really spoken. The reason? I chose not to follow in his footsteps and instead started my own restaurant. Now, my dad and we've always had a rocky kind of relationship. We butted heads a lot, sure, but back then, it was mostly over little things. We'd fight, then make up, and life would go on. But everything changed last year. That's when I told him I wouldn't be taking over the business once he stepped down. He didn't take it well. And to be fair, I think he really thought I'd carry the torch. I'm his only biological kid, and for as long as I can remember, he's made it clear that he wanted me to continue what he started, to turn his hard work into a legacy, something that would stay in the family. That was his dream. But the truth is, it never was mine. To be honest, I'd only agreed to it in the first place because I didn't have a clue what I actually wanted to do with my life. I was fresh out of business school, hadn't really explored many options yet, and taking over the business just seemed like the path of least resistance. But as time passed, I started to figure myself out. I met new people, had new experiences, and my perspective shifted. My dreams began to take shape, and they didn't include inheriting a furniture company. About 6 years ago, I met Robert, my now husband, and we started dating. 3 years into our relationship, we tied the knot. Robert was working as a sous chef at a well-known Italian restaurant, doing pretty well for himself, and I was still involved in my dad's business at the time. Now, I didn't hate working there or anything, it just didn't light a fire in me. Around the time we got engaged, Robert shared his dream of opening his own place. Even though he worked in Italian cuisine, he's actually of Pakistani heritage, and let me tell you, his food is out of this world. Seriously, he cooks the kind of meals that make you want to lick the plate clean. I knew right then that we had something special. He could take the reins in the kitchen, and I'd handle the business side of things. It felt like the perfect partnership. Since we were getting married anyway, it made sense to start planning our future together, including this restaurant idea. And it's not like we kept any of this from my dad. I'd mentioned it to him more than once, told him flat out that Robert and I were thinking about starting something of our own. I even explained that it might mean I wouldn't be taking over the family business after all. But every time I brought it up, he just brushed it off. Didn't say much, no big reaction. So, naturally, I figured he wasn't too bothered. Whether he liked it or not, though, I wasn't going to let go of my dream. I finally had a vision for my life, and Robert and I were fully committed to making it happen. We told my dad what our plans were, plain and clear, so it wasn't like this news came out of nowhere. After the wedding, we had a serious talk with him. We explained that I'd be stepping away from the company so we could focus on starting our own restaurant, and that it was time for him to start grooming someone else to take over. To be perfectly clear, I'd been easing him into this for months, 8, to be exact, ever since Robert and I got engaged. I'd been saying again and again that I didn't see myself taking over the business anymore. But I guess he just didn't believe me or thought I'd come around eventually. So, after our honeymoon, Robert and I sat down with him to make it official. That's when reality seemed to hit him, and he was furious. He lashed out, saying I was betraying him and abandoning the business. I honestly didn't think that was fair. I'd tried to be upfront about everything for so long, but he hadn't taken any of it seriously until that moment. His main argument was that I'd been promising for years to carry on the legacy, and now I was backing out. I get it. That must have felt like a huge letdown to him. I could see why he felt hurt. Robert and I talked it over, and yeah, we realized I probably should have made the decision sooner. My dad wasn't getting any younger, and it's not easy running a business like that on your own. So, we figured we'd find some middle ground. I offered to stick around until he found the right person to take my place. I'd keep working hard, just like I always had, but also start laying the groundwork for a restaurant during my off hours. This way, I wouldn't have to give up on our dream, and I'd still be doing right by my dad, at least to some extent. Honestly, I didn't think it would take him long to find someone new anyway, because I already had a suggestion. My stepsister. My parents stayed together until I was about 7, but honestly, their split wasn't messy or dramatic. They'd simply fallen out of love, and that was that. It didn't feel like a big blow to me. Maybe it's because they'd already been living kind of separate lives since I was 5, so by the time the divorce happened, it just felt inevitable. And they did a pretty great job of keeping things civil and making sure I was unaffected. Growing up, I had a pretty stable childhood. I'd spend half the month at my mom's place and the other half with my dad. It worked out fine, and I've always felt close to both of them. Honestly, I still do. When I was 12, about 5 years after the divorce, my dad remarried. He'd been dating my stepmom for a couple of years before that, and I liked her right from the start. But what really made that new chapter special was Jennifer, my stepsister. She was 2 years younger than me, and I'd always wanted a little sister, so it felt like the universe had finally given me one. Jennifer and I hit it off right away. Over the years, we got incredibly close enough that we don't even bother mentioning the step part anymore. As far as we're concerned, we're real sisters. Blood or not, she's family, plain and simple. So, when my dad finally asked me to start thinking about who could take over my role in the company, Jennifer was the first person who came to mind. It just made sense. She already had an interest in the business, and she'd even gone to business school herself. But here's the thing, my dad had never once brought her into the conversation. In his mind, the job was always meant for me and only me. Jennifer and I had talked about that a lot. She confided in me more than once that it stung a little, being overlooked like that. She wasn't bitter, though. She understood that I was his biological daughter and figured it was natural for him to put me first. She had her own career, so it wasn't about needing the job. What hurt her was how easily he excluded her, not just from the business, but sometimes from his world altogether. Now, to be clear, my dad did care about Jennifer. He did. But the difference in how he treated us was impossible to miss. In his eyes, I was the golden child. And while that came with some perks, it also came with pressure and expectations I never really signed up for. I often felt guilty about how things played out between Jennifer and my dad, especially since she lost her own father when she was really young. I know she had hoped mine might step into that role, at least a little. But he never really made that space for her. She never complained, not even once. That's just who she is, quietly strong, gracious, and incredibly selfless. She didn't even bring it up with her mom. It was only after I brought it up first that she opened up to me. I guess she knew I'd get it. In fact, back when she first told me that she'd love the chance to carry on the family business because she genuinely found it interesting, I was ready to step aside. I wanted to tell my dad to train her instead. But Jennifer stopped me. She didn't want it to seem like she was swooping in and stealing something that was meant to be mine. She knew how much it meant to my dad, and she didn't want to hurt me either. That's why I went along with the plan in the beginning, why I tried to be the daughter he wanted me to be even though my heart wasn't in it. Just so it's clear, I wasn't trying to cling to the favorite child role or keep Jennifer out of anything. If anything, I was willing to step aside early on. So when I finally made the decision to leave the business and follow my own path, the first person I called was Jennifer. She already knew most of what was going on, but this time, I told her directly I wanted her to take over. She was hesitant at first, understandably. But I talked her through it, and she agreed. Then came the hard part, telling my dad. He was hesitant too. But I told him flat out, it's either Jennifer or no one, because I didn't have time to go on a long hunt for someone we could trust, then spend years training them. That just wasn't going to work. I think that kind of messed with whatever plan he had in his head. Maybe he thought it'd take me forever to find someone suitable, and in the meantime, I'd get so tied up in the business again that I'd forget all about the restaurant. But I was already a few steps ahead of him. This all happened nearly 2 years ago. As soon as Jennifer agreed, I jumped into training her. It wasn't easy. We were both working full-time jobs, so juggling all of it was exhausting. My days were packed running operations at the furniture company, mentoring Jennifer, and then coming home to work on our restaurant plans with Robert. It felt like there weren't enough hours in the day, but I pushed through. Robert was incredibly supportive, and Jennifer gave it her all. Knowing I had them in my corner made the chaos bearable. For the first year, my dad didn't really say much. He kind of stood back and watched. Then, last year, Jennifer came to me and said she felt ready. So, we gave her a trial run, let her run the whole show for a couple of months, and she absolutely crushed it. Jennifer picked things up fast, faster than I expected, honestly. It helped that she'd grown up around the business just like I had. She already understood the ins and outs, which gave her a bit of a head start. And when it came to trust, there really wasn't anyone we trusted more than her. So about a year ago, I told my dad the big news. Jennifer was ready. Fully trained, completely capable, and more than willing to take the reins. I said he could finally retire whenever he wanted, knowing that the business would be in good hands. Naturally, Jennifer and I thought he'd be happy. We figured he'd feel relieved, maybe even proud. But instead, he seemed irritated the day we made the announcement. Even when we threw a small party to celebrate the transition, a way to honor this big milestone, he barely cracked a smile. Something was clearly off. So, after the party, I pulled him aside to ask what was really going on. That's when he dropped the truth on me. He didn't want Jennifer to take over. Didn't think she was the right fit. No matter how much she'd proven herself, he still didn't consider her capable, and the only reason? She wasn't blood. Yep, according to him, the business wasn't in her veins the way it was in mine. Honestly, it was the most ridiculous excuse I'd ever heard. I tried to get through to him. I reminded him that Jennifer had been in his life for nearly 2 decades, that she was his stepdaughter and deserved every bit of love and recognition he gave me. I told him flat out that he was being unfair, especially after she had worked her tail off to be ready for this. But instead of hearing me out, he turned on me. Said the only reason I was pushing Jennifer forward was because I was too selfish to take over myself. Then he hit below the belt. He said he was glad I was walking away, that he wouldn't want someone like me running his company anyway. Claimed I had no respect for the legacy he built. That was it. I snapped. We got into a full-blown argument. I told him he was being cruel to both of us. He couldn't accept that I had dreams of my own, and he refused to see Jennifer's value just because she didn't share his blood. Meanwhile, she was probably more dedicated and passionate about the business than I had ever been. It was an ugly fight. I walked out that night, and that was the last time we spoke, for nearly a year. We completely cut contact. No visits, no calls, nothing. People in the family tried nudging us to make amends, but I was too hurt. I wasn't interested in reconnecting until he apologized. Then, a couple of weeks ago, Jennifer told me he had finally announced his retirement. Apparently, his doctor warned him to slow down. His health was starting to take a hit. Jennifer had been planning a small retirement party, but once I heard about his condition, I felt this tug to do something. I figured maybe this was my shot to bury the hatchet, to do something kind for him even if things were still tense between us. So I offered to take over the planning. Jennifer was totally on board. She happily stepped aside and let me handle the entire event. I organized the whole thing as a surprise, hoped maybe it would soften him a bit, open the door for reconciliation. 4 days ago, the party finally happened. Everyone was there, family, friends, old coworkers, longtime clients. I expected at least a little warmth from him when he saw me, but no. He looked annoyed that I'd even shown up. Still, I stayed polite. During the event, I walked over to him while he was chatting with some of his old business associates. These were people he'd known forever, folks who remembered me as a kid but probably hadn't seen me in years. I thought he'd say something like, "This is my daughter, you know?" Something warm, something proud. But nope. He glanced at me and said, "Oh, this is one of my ex-employees." I just stood there for a second, completely stunned. But I didn't want to create a scene, so I faked a smile, gave a little nod, and quietly walked away. I found myself standing alone in a corner, still trying to process what had just happened. A few minutes later, my dad came over. For a second, I thought maybe he was coming to apologize. Maybe he'd realized he crossed a line. But no. Instead, he looked uncomfortable and told me that while he appreciated that I'd organized the party, he'd rather I left. He said he didn't want to introduce me to people as his daughter. He didn't want anyone to know that the woman who walked away from his business, the so-called failure who opened a struggling restaurant, was his kid. He said having me there was embarrassing. Hearing those words shattered something inside me. I mean, it actually hurt. Deeply. But I also felt the surge of anger. So I didn't say another word. I just turned around and walked out of there, didn't say goodbye to a soul. Robert and I talked that night, and we agreed we were done trying to fix this. My dad had called me a failure and dismissed everything I'd done with my life just because I chose a different path. And after all the effort I'd made to mend things, to do something kind for him despite our issues, he still spat in my face. So we blocked him, cut off all communication, decided we weren't going to talk about it anymore or waste our energy trying to patch things up. I didn't even tell Jennifer what had happened right away. I just didn't want to drag her into it. I needed space from the drama. But then, just yesterday, karma kind of circled back. My dad tried to reach out, but I'd already blocked his number. So he ended up using his wife's phone to send me a text. I didn't reply. I was slammed with work. That's when my stepmom called. She said he was desperate to talk to me and couldn't figure out why I wasn't answering. I told my stepmom I wasn't interested in speaking to my dad. I didn't want to be rude to her, so I kept it respectful. I just said that I'd prefer she stay out of it. She understood and hung up. But not long after that, Jennifer called me. She could tell something was going on, and with her, I've never felt the need to hold anything back. So I told her the whole story, exactly what happened at the party, word for word. She was stunned. Then I asked her why, out of nowhere, our dad was suddenly trying so hard to reach me. That's when she dropped the bombshell. Apparently, one of his old business buddies had recognized me from a recent magazine feature, Robert, and I had done an interview for a popular food publication just a few weeks earlier. That associate had called my dad, surprised to realize that his daughter, the one he called a failure, was actually the co-owner of a buzzing South Asian restaurant that was getting a ton of attention. And of course, my dad had no clue. Because he never cared enough to ask, never followed our journey, never showed even a sliver of interest in what I was building. If he had, he would have known that our place was thriving, even though it had only been open for 8 months. Once I realized he only wanted to talk now because someone else told him I was worth talking to, it made me even less inclined to call him back. It didn't feel genuine. It felt like pure opportunism. Jennifer understood that. She didn't push me. But my dad wouldn't let up. Since then, he's been bombarding my phone with messages, text after text, all coming from my stepmom's number since I'd already blocked him on mine. Honestly, I was on the verge of blocking her too. She hadn't done anything wrong, but she was being pulled into all this mess, and I was tired of being chased. Then about an hour ago, she called again. This time, she said he was heartbroken and really wanted to make things right. She practically begged me to respond, said he was desperate to speak with me and couldn't understand why I wouldn't even give him a chance. I told her I was done. I said I had no interest in hearing more apologies that weren't rooted in truth. She kept pushing, trying to convince me how sorry he was, and yeah, that made me feel like a jerk for stonewalling him. Am I the asshole for not speaking to my father after he called me a failure and refused to even acknowledge me as his daughter in front of his friends? So, I caved. I know most people probably would have said not to, but I finally responded. He kept blowing up my phone using my stepmom's number, and I just couldn't bring myself to block her. It felt like if I did, I'd cut off the last line of emergency communication, and that didn't sit right with me. If something serious happened, I'd have no way of finding out until Jennifer got involved, and let's be real, she doesn't always answer calls. It would have gotten messy. So I texted him. Just one message. I asked what he wanted to say. He replied that he wanted to talk on the phone. So I agreed. It's been 2 days since I posted, and today I finally had the time and emotional bandwidth to deal with him. I called. He started off trying to make small talk, but I didn't give him much. Dry replies, no real warmth. Eventually, he stopped skirting around and got to the point. He told me he was sorry, that he regretted treating me the way he did. He said if he had known how successful I was, how far I'd come, he never would have acted the way he did, never would have said those hurtful things at the party. He admitted he'd been holding a grudge, still upset that I didn't take over the business like I promised years ago. Now that he saw what I'd built, he wanted to fix things. And you know what? That stung. A lot. Because the truth is, it shouldn't have taken a magazine article or some third-party validation for him to respect me. I'm his daughter. That should have been enough. I told him as much. I explained that what hurt the most was knowing that he only came around once he realized I was successful. That kind of conditional love? It was hard to forgive. I said I needed time, that I couldn't just pretend none of it happened. But instead of really hearing me, he got defensive. Said again that he only acted that way because he didn't know how well I was doing. That he was still angry about the past. It was like the more we talked, the more he unraveled the apology he had started with. By the end of the call, it felt like we were right back where we started. I lost my temper. I hung up. And this time, I didn't hesitate. I blocked my stepmom, too. Not because I blame her, but because I needed space. I knew Jennifer wouldn't let him use her number to reach me, so for now, that door is shut. I explained everything to Jennifer, told her to please apologize to her mom on my behalf. I didn't mean to drag her into this, but I couldn't keep being the one holding the emotional weight for everyone. Hey again. So, last week I had a phone call with my dad. It didn't go the way I hoped. He had reached out to apologize, but by the end of it, things just unraveled, and we were left at the same place we'd been stuck in for the past year. After that, we didn't speak again. I threw myself back into work. The restaurant keeps me on my feet, and honestly, that helped keep my mind off everything. The only person from that side of the family I've stayed in contact with has been Jennifer. Then, yesterday, she gave me an update. She told me that Dad's been really down lately. He hasn't been talking to anyone, not even his wife. That's not like him at all. Apparently, he's been shutting everyone out. I brought it up with my mom, just to get her take. Normally, she wouldn't suggest I go chasing after him again, especially after everything he's said and done. But even she could see that he's not handling this well. And with his health being what it is, it's got us all worried. So after talking it over with Robert, we made a decision. We're going to go visit him today. No expectations, no promises. Just a visit to see where things stand. I'm not expecting a magical fix. You don't go from silence and resentment to full reconciliation in a single afternoon. But I'd rather take this step now than look back one day and regret not trying, especially if something were to happen and I never got the chance. That's probably my biggest fear in all of this. Missing the window to make things right when I still can. So yeah, here we go. Wish me luck. Hey folks, just got back from my dad's place a few hours ago. And, surprisingly, it went well. Better than I expected. I think we've reached a point where we're both ready to start healing. There's been a lot of hurt and a lot of stubbornness on both sides. And, well, my dad's not exactly known for admitting his faults. He's always had a pretty big ego, which he actually owned up to today. That was new. But the moment he saw me walk through that door, something shifted. He broke down. He couldn't stop crying. For the first 15 minutes, he was just overwhelmed, apologizing over and over again for how he'd treated me. And not just me, he hugged Jennifer, too, and told her how sorry he was for never loving her the way he should have. He said he always knew she looked up to him like a real father, but he hadn't treated her as one. And that realization had been weighing on him. It was a heavy conversation. Emotionally exhausting, honestly. But I think it was what we all needed. By the end of it, we agreed that we're going to try to rebuild. Try to understand each other better. No more burying things or pretending everything's okay when it's not. We also decided to make spending time together a priority. We're going to aim for a family dinner at least once a week, just to stay connected. Life's too short not to, and this weekend, they're coming to our restaurant. It'll be their first time visiting, which feels like a big step. Jennifer's been there plenty of times, but for my dad and stepmom, this will be their first look into the life I built. I'm nervous, but mostly, I'm hopeful. I'm just glad we took this step. Because in spite of all the pain, in spite of the words and the silence and the years lost, he's still my dad. And I still love him.